Welcome to Wisdom of the World. Today I'm going to tell a story from when I was in Bhutan. The story is the real story, the true story of the first grammar book in Bhutan. The story is called The 5 Words for Penis. And it goes like this. Once upon a time, to be exact, in 1984, I went to Nepal and I underwent a language and a cultural training course. I had to, with my wife, had to stay in a Brahmin's family house to learn to speak the language and also to understand the culture. I remember eating with the cows and the pigs because they said I was not clean enough to be sharing a meal with them. Fast forward to 1988. I went as a country director for a Dutch NGO to Bhutan. And I found out that the language, Dzongkha, the national language, the official national language, was not a language that was documented in any way. There was no grammar, no dictionary, there was no course on how to learn it, let alone the culture of the country. So I said, okay, if that's not there, then I have to start it. So I invited a well-known man, George van Riem, I should say Professor Dr. George van Riem, to come to Bhutan and to do that work. And so he did. He actually came to the country and he left with the first draft grammar of Dzongkha in the plane back home. Now, Dr. George van Riem did his PhD in linguistics here in Leiden, and I may add, that's on my account, he also has a PhD in sex. He's as gay as a could. I'll tell you more later about that. George at the moment is a director of the Language Institute in Bern, where he also is a professor emeritus. So George came to Bhutan and he was talking to everybody. Just, what do you say? How do you say this? How do you say that? Amazing. This is a guy who learns a language for breakfast. You know, he knows at least more than 20 languages and he needs to speak it perfectly. He says he needs to be able to give a speech in it. Otherwise, he says he doesn't know that language. Now, one day, when I was working in my office in Thimphu, the capital of Bhutan, he came and he put on my desk a little small notebook, which he said is the first draft grammar of Bumtangka. Bumtangka was one of the, it's a district in central Bhutan, the northern part of central Bhutan, and they have their own language. Just like in many countries, there are many local languages. And so I leafed through that book and I said to George, this is all about sex. And George looked at me and he says, yeah. You know, he shrugged his shoulders. He says, that's all they talk about. Yeah. And I said, really? Or is that just your personal, shall I say, obsession? And he said, no. This is just what they talk about. You just don't understand it. Okay. So I leaf a bit more through that book. And there I find a chapter which was written about penises, and I find the 5 words for penises in Bumtangka in Bhutan. Let me explain to you. I don't know exactly what the words were again, but the first word is for when a baby is just born and he's got, you know, his little willy, right? The second word is for when, you know, as a boy, you've been able to get it up, get an erection, right? Then the third word is if you have been able to do that and you've actually have done it, if you know what I mean. And the fourth word is if you have done it successfully, meaning you have been able to produce a child, a baby. And the fifth word for penis is when you're old and you can no longer get it up. So this was all patiently explained to me by George. And then I said to George, George, where are you in these different phases? And he said to me, well, that's for me to know and for you to find out. I said, no, George, no, thank you. But speaking of that, George, I think that's not what the asshole was made for. And then George says, how do you know? If you have any comments on this story or suggestions for another ones, let me know. Thank you.